I was walking home from a late shift at the diner, a routine that had become second nature. It was just past midnight, and the streets were desolate, lit only by the flickering streetlights. I always took the same route through a somewhat sketchy neighborhood. Most nights, it didn't bother me, but tonight felt different. An unsettling chill lingered in the air. As I turned onto East Maple Street, I noticed a figure standing under a flickering street lamp, his face hidden in shadow. I tried to ignore him and quickened my pace, my heart thumping loudly. The sound of my footsteps echoed against the concrete, and I felt his eyes on me, an uncomfortable weight that made me want to look back, but I resisted. "Hey!" he called out, his voice slurring slightly, as if he had been drinking. "Where you headed so late?" I didn't reply, just kept walking, my breath quickening. I could hear him shuffling behind me, trying to catch up. "Come on, don't be rude. I just want to talk." He was closer now, his tone shifting from casual to insistent. I glanced over my shoulder. He was a tall man, maybe in his late 20s, wearing a frayed hoodie and well-worn jeans. His hair was greasy and unkempt, and there was something wild in his eyes that sent a clear signal of danger. Leave me alone," I finally said, my voice sharper than intended. I picked up my pace, adrenaline coursing through my veins. "You don't have to be like that," he said, his tone darkening. "I'm just trying to get to know you." I turned down a side street, hoping to lose him, but he followed, his footsteps heavy and deliberate. My heart raced as I scanned for options. The street was empty, devoid of life. It felt like a scene from a horror movie, and I was the unwitting star. "Where are you going?" he shouted, almost gleefully. "I just want to talk." I reached the store just as he lunged forward, grabbing my arm. Panic shot through me as I pulled away. "Get away from me!" I shouted, the urgency startling even me. I dashed inside and slammed the door behind me, my chest heaving. The clerk, a tired-looking man with a baseball cap, raised an eyebrow. I pointed outside, in panic, my voice. "There's a guy out there. He's following me." The clerk glanced out the window, but saw nothing. "Are you sure he just walked by?" I shook my head, heart racing. "No, he's been following me for blocks." Suddenly the door swung open, the bell jingling as he stepped inside, an unsettling grin on his face. "There you are. I thought you wanted to talk." "Leave her alone," the clerk shouted, stepping in front of me. The man's smile faltered, then he laughed, a low, mocking sound that made my skin crawl. "I'm just having a conversation," he said, eyes darting between us. "Isn't that what people do?" "Back off," the clerk warned, shifting to a defensive stance. I felt frozen, torn between fear and gratitude for this stranger's intervention. With a sudden movement, the man stepped closer, and I saw something dangerous in his eyes. "You don't know what you're getting into, do you?" I took a step back, pulse racing, as the clerk stood firm. "You need to leave, now." For a moment, he hesitated, tension crackling in the air. Then, with a huff, he stepped back, a smirk still plastered across his face. "Fine, but I'll be around." He turned and walked out, leaving a suffocating silence behind. I leaned against the counter, trembling, adrenaline still pumping. "Are you okay?" the clerk asked gently, concern in his eyes. I nodded, but the tremor in my hands gave me away. I left the store with a mix of relief and lingering terror. I made it home, but the feeling of being watched persisted for days. I couldn't shake the image of that man's wild grin, or the way he seemed to take joy in my fear. Even now, months later, I can't walk alone at night without glancing over my shoulder, half expecting to see him lurking in the shadows. Let's not meet again. I was walking home late one evening in October, the streetlights flickering against the encroaching darkness. I had just finished a long shift at the diner, my feet aching and my mind foggy from exhaustion. It was around 11 p.m., and the air had that crisp bite of fall, a reminder that winter was approaching. I lived in a relatively safe neighborhood, but I always kept my guard up, especially at night. As I turned onto a quieter street, I noticed a man standing by a lamppost. He appeared to be in his late 30s, wearing a faded hoodie and jeans that seemed a size too big. He was just standing there, staring at me. My stomach tightened. I tried to convince myself I was overreacting. Perhaps he was waiting for someone, like me. But as I approached, he shifted his weight, and I felt a chill run down my spine. "Hey there," he called out, his voice low and gravelly. I forced a smile, trying to project calm. "Hi," I replied, quickening my pace. "Where are you headed?" he asked, stepping slightly into my path. "Just home," I said, keeping my distance, my heart racing. "Is that right?" He tilted his head, a crooked grin forming on his lips. "You're one of the waitresses, huh?" I nodded, my instincts screaming at me to back away. "I really should get going," I said, trying to sidestep him. "Not so fast," he said, stepping closer. "What's the rush? It's a beautiful night, don't you think?" Panic surged through me as I remembered the pepper spray I kept in my bag. I fumbled for it, but the man noticed my movements. "You don't need that," he chuckled, but there was no humor in his voice. "I just want to talk." "Look, I'm not interested," I said, trying to sound assertive, but my voice trembled despite my efforts. I could feel the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. He stepped forward, invading my space. "Why don't we take a little walk together?" "No, thank you," I said, my heart pounding. I turned to leave, but he grabbed my wrist, his grip surprisingly strong. "Don't be rude. I'm just trying to be friendly." That's when a car approached down the street, its headlights cutting through the darkness. I seized the moment and yanked my arm free. "Get away from me!" I shouted, adrenaline coursing through my veins. He hesitated, his expression shifting as if weighing his options. I dashed toward the oncoming headlights, praying the driver would see me. The car slowed, and I ran straight to it, knocking on the window frantically. The driver, a middle-aged woman with a puzzled expression, rolled down the window. "What's wrong?" "Please help me. That man!" I pointed behind me, my breath coming in ragged gasps. The man had retreated a few steps, but I could see the anger brewing in his eyes. "It's okay, sweetheart," the woman said, her voice soothing. "Just get in." I didn't hesitate. I opened the door and climbed in, locking it behind me. The woman glanced at the man, who was now standing there with a menacing scowl. "Drive, please," I whispered, still shaking, my heart racing as the woman stepped on the gas. We sped away, and I looked back to see the man still watching us, his figure receding into the night. "Are you okay?" the driver asked, her tone filled with genuine concern. I think so," I stammered, but the tremors in my hands betrayed my fear. I couldn't shake the feeling of his eyes on me, the way he had invaded my space. As we neared my apartment, I thanked her profusely and hurried inside, locking the door behind me. I leaned against it, my heart still pounding. Relief washed over me, but the terror of that encounter lingered like a shadow in my mind. I replayed every moment, every word, and the chilling way he had looked at me. I knew I wouldn't forget it. I wouldn't forget him. Let's not meet again. It was a humid August evening in Atlanta, and I had just wrapped up a long shift at the diner. Without a car, I relied on the bus, but that night I felt particularly drained. The sun had dipped below the horizon, leaving a dim orange glow quickly fading into darkness. My phone indicated it was nearly 11 p.m., and I had a 20-minute wait for the next bus to my tiny apartment. Standing at the bus stop, I noticed a man loitering nearby. He was tall, dressed in a dark hoodie, hands shoved deep into his pockets. I tried to ignore him, focusing on my phone and scrolling through social media to distract myself. Yet I couldn't shake the feeling that he was watching me. Every now and then I'd glance up, and sure enough, he'd be staring, his expression hard to read in the dim light. After what felt like an eternity, the bus finally arrived, and I climbed aboard, grateful for the reprieve. I found a seat towards the back, hoping to blend into the shadows. I could still feel the man's eyes on me as he boarded, scanning the bus before settling in a few seats away. My heart raced. The bus lurched forward, taking us away from the stop, but I couldn't relax with him so close. As we rode through the quiet streets, I kept glancing his way. He was looking out the window, but every few moments, I felt him shift his attention back to me. I tried to convince myself it was all in my head, but the pit in my stomach told me otherwise. Suddenly, the bus stopped, and a few passengers got off, leaving even fewer people on board, amplifying the tension. Then it happened. The man stood up and moved closer. My breath caught in my throat as he leaned down, our eyes locking. "Hey," he said, his voice low and gravelly. "You dropped something." He held out a crumpled piece of paper I hadn't noticed falling from my bag. "Oh, thanks," I replied hesitantly, taking it from him. When I looked at the paper, it was just a receipt. Embarrassment washed over me for not being more careful, but something felt unsettling about how he lingered. "It's a nice night, isn't it?" he asked, a strange smile creeping across his face. "Yeah, I guess so," I muttered, trying to keep my voice steady. He leaned even closer. "You're not scared, are you? Out here? All alone?" A chill ran down my spine. "Not really," I lied, my voice wavering. "Good. You shouldn't be. It's a big city. Lots of people." He paused, studying me. "But you never know who's watching, right?" My heart dropped. It felt like he could see right through me, peeling back layers of my facade until he found the terrified core. I needed to get off this bus. My stop was only a few blocks away, and I had to move fast. When the bus finally pulled up to my stop, I stood up, my body tense. "This is me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady as I pushed past him. "Wait," he called just as I reached the door. "You dropped something else." I didn't turn around. I dashed off the bus, the night air hitting me like a slap. I could hear him stepping off behind me. Panic surged through my veins as I sprinted down the street. I dared not look back, but I could hear his footsteps gaining on me. "Hey," he shouted, "you forgot your receipt." I dodged around a corner, breath coming in ragged gasps. Adrenaline coursed through me, fueling my legs until I reached a busy street. The shop lights were still on, and people milled about, oblivious to my impending doom. I slowed down, heart pounding in my ears, and finally turned to look. He was nowhere in sight. Leaning against a lamppost, I gasped for breath, relief washing over me. But that relief was tainted by the knowledge that I had come dangerously close to a different kind of ending that night. The man left an imprint on my mind, a reminder of how quickly things could turn sinister. I eventually made it home, but the shadows in my small apartment felt darker than usual. I locked the door behind me, and while I tried to shake off the encounter, it clung to me like a cold sweat. Let's not meet again. It was a chilly Tuesday evening in late October when I found myself walking home from my late shift at the coffee shop, the streets slick with rain. The clock on my phone read 10:45 p.m. I usually took the bus, but it had stopped running earlier than expected, leaving me with no choice but to walk the 3 miles through the dimly lit neighborhood. As I hurried along the sidewalk, the only sounds were the distant hum of traffic and the occasional rustle of leaves. I wrapped my coat tighter around me, wishing I had grabbed my umbrella. The streetlights flickered intermittently, casting uneasy shadows that danced around me. About halfway home, I turned onto a quieter road, hoping it would be a shortcut. That's when I noticed him, a man leaning against a lamppost, his face obscured by the collar of a tattered jacket. He seemed to be watching me. I quickened my pace, trying to shake off the feeling of unease that settled in my stomach. "Hey, you!" he called out, a raspy voice cutting through the night air. I hesitated but didn't turn around. "I'm not interested," I shouted over my shoulder, my heart racing. "Just wanted to ask for directions," he replied, a hint of annoyance in his voice. It was oddly calm, unnaturally so. I didn't respond, desperate to put more distance between us. As I continued walking, I heard his footsteps echoing behind me, quickening with every step I took. Panic surged through me. I could hear his heavy breathing now, each inhale sounding more like a threat. My mind raced, wondering if he was just lost or if he had darker intentions. "Come on, don't be rude," he shouted, his tone shifting, now laced with hostility. "I'm just trying to get home too." I glanced over my shoulder, catching a glimpse of him. He was closer, eyes wide, a grin that seemed both forced and menacing. I turned back around and picked up my pace, adrenaline pumping through my veins. "Please, just leave me alone," I called, my voice wavering despite my effort to sound confident.
"Why don't you talk to me? It's lonely out here. You wouldn't want to ignore someone who might help you." His words dripped with a sickly sweetness that made my skin crawl. I noticed an alleyway up ahead, a split-second decision flashing in my mind. I veered left, darting into the shadows, praying he wouldn't follow. I pressed myself against the cool brick wall, my breath shallow, straining to hear his footsteps. They paused. "Where did you go?" he called, his voice echoing, now cold and sharp. I knew I had to move. I waited for the sound of his footsteps to fade before inching toward the alley's mouth, desperately hoping to find a nearby street or someone who could help me. Just as I reached the edge, I heard a noise behind me, a scuffle, then silence. I took a deep breath and stepped out cautiously. To my relief, the street was empty, bathed in the harsh yellow light of the street lamps. I turned left and sprinted, my legs burning as I pushed myself harder than I ever had before. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached a busier road, the distant sound of cars reassuring me that I was no longer alone. I stopped and looked back, half expecting to see him lurking in the shadows. Nothing. I hailed a cab, practically throwing myself into the back seat. "Just drive, please." As the driver took off, I sank back against the seat, my heart still racing. I didn't look back, but I could still feel the weight of his gaze on me, hauntingly close. When I finally made it home, I locked the door behind me and sank to the floor, my hands trembling. I replayed every moment in my head, the adrenaline fading but the fear settling deep in my bones. I was safe, but the encounter had carved a dark shadow over my mind. I'll never forget that night or how close I came to a fate I didn't want to imagine. Let's not meet again.
It was a chilly evening in late October, and I had just finished my shift at the grocery store. The streets were mostly empty, the kind of quiet that makes the hairs on your arms stand on end. With earbuds in, I walked home, listening to a true crime podcast. Not the best choice for a dark, deserted street. I turned onto a dimly lit alley that cut through a small park, a shortcut I often took. The leaves crunched beneath my sneakers, echoing in the stillness. As I walked, I noticed a figure leaning against a lamppost at the far end of the alley. The light cast an eerie glow around him, and I could make out the outline of his heavy, dark jacket. I hesitated, but kept walking, reminding myself that I was just being paranoid. As I got closer, he straightened up and stepped forward, blocking my path. He had an unsettling smile, one that didn't reach his eyes. "Hey there, where are you off to in such a hurry?" His voice was low and gravelly, as if he had been smoking too long. "Just heading home," I replied, trying to sound casual, though my heart raced. I glanced back. The street behind me was completely empty. "Home, huh? Don't you think you should be careful out here? Strange things happen in this neighborhood." He took a step closer, and I could see the darkness in his eyes, cold, devoid of warmth. "Yeah, I'm fine," I said, backing up a little. The alley felt smaller, shadows closing in. "I really need to go." I attempted to sidestep him, but he moved closer, blocking my exit. "Don't rush off. I just want to talk." He leaned in, and I could smell stale cigarettes on his breath. Panic rose in my chest. "I'm really not interested," I managed to say, my voice shaking. My instincts screamed at me to get away, but he sensed my fear. "Come on, don't be like that. I'm just trying to have a nice conversation." He reached out, and I flinched as his fingers brushed against my arm. In that moment, adrenaline kicked in. I turned and ran, not looking back, focusing only on the sound of my feet pounding against the pavement. The alley stretched endlessly before me, but I finally burst out into the park, gasping for air. The streetlights flickered above, and I darted toward the main road, my heart pounding in my ears. "Hey, wait!" I heard him shout from behind, his tone shifting from casual to furious. I didn't stop. I just ran. I reached the main street where a few cars passed by, the bright lights almost blinding after the darkness of the alley. I flagged down the first car I saw, nearly jumping in before the driver had a chance to react. "Please, just take me home," I begged, my voice trembling. The driver, an older man with a concerned look, nodded and stepped on the gas. As we drove away, I glanced back, half expecting to see him chasing after us. But there was nothing but shadows, no sign of the man who had stalked me. I felt relief wash over me, tainted by the chill of what could have happened. When I finally got home, I locked the doors and turned on all the lights. I spent the night replaying the encounter in my mind, the chill of his smile haunting me. That was months ago, but I still avoid that alley. The thought of running into him again lingers, a reminder of how quickly situations can escalate. Let's not meet again.